One of the last animated fruits of this weird summer of 2020 is the Fungies, a series originally destined for Cartoon Network but ultimately landing on HBO Max. Is there anything good growing around here? Let's dive into a review. The Fungies is a cartoon created by Stephen P. Neary, previously of Clarence, that explores the mushroom metropolis of Fungi Town through the eyes and adventures of youngster Seth. As with Tig and Seek, which has previously premiered and that I've previously reviewed, this show was originally destined to premiere on Cartoon Network, but last fall it was decided that both shows would instead be shoved away and used to prop up Warner Media's nascent streaming service HBO Max. At the time, I accused both shows of being quite infantile in equal measure and a clash with the rest of the network's current fare from a creative standpoint. Tig and Seek ultimately turned out to be a boring disaster which somehow managed to further the destruction of basic storytelling that Cartoon Network's been flirting with throughout 2020. So given these two shows were greenlit and often mentioned together prior to recently, I don't have high hopes for this show going in. I hate that there's the possibility I might have to give the show credit for clearing my own low bar of not burning more of the house down, but that's where Cartoon Network is creatively at this point. They should and need to do better, but I'm increasingly doubting whether or not they can. Preconceptions and waffling quickly aside, let's actually watch this show and honestly see how it fares as a product. My immediate first reaction to the show is in the form of its cheese-filled and arguably moralistic theme song, in which I find out that they're pronouncing Fungies with a hard G. I've been saying it Fungies for the past almost year, while this intro says Fungies. It's not even a real qualm probably, but it still sounds wrong to me. Anyway, into episode 1, Let It Snowball, with title cards pretty obviously inspired by the credits of OKKO. Not saying it's a ripoff, but the looks are similar. We run into our main four kids, or rather, they run into us. Main character Seth first by a nose, and then the rest of them. To me, Seth sounds like Tyler from Super Noobs if he was trying to tone it down for a preschool show. It's probably not him, but I'll call the sound alike anyway. Seth is pretty obviously a ringleader, and today he's pulling his friends into climbing the area's tallest mountain. The blue fungi, we eventually find out is Seth's older brother, needs some convincing that is hastily done. The other two briefly run off in the background. The dinosaur character also sounds like she would be right at home on a preschool show. Atop the mountain, the gang discovers snow. The older brother also makes a snow girlfriend, and the dinosaur opens a portal into surrealism. They also discover skiing on the way down. Seth wants to bring the snow home to his mother to put on the new shelf she's built, but given snow melts into water, he doesn't get the chance. He shows some intense dedication to learning about snow to try and get it home safe. Meanwhile, his older brother creates a whole snow relationship with the snow fungi he's dubbed Snowmantha. Seth eventually makes a gigantic snowball, which he gets to town, but in a Pyrrhic way at the cost of itself. Technically defeated, his mother says she doesn't care because it was the thought that counted. Anticlimactically, the episode ends with an avalanche, and she's not necessarily impressed by Seth's discovery. After watching episode 1, I came away not really knowing how to feel about this show. It's not abjectly awful like Tig and Seek was, and I still hate that I have to give them credit for literally doing the bare minimum here in that regard. But it's also not something I call good. It's the same baseline blandness that CN's been putting out for 2 years now. This time just without the pretense of ambition. It's not trying to be an action comedy or an adventurous romp, at least beyond the basic hijinks and Sue premise presented here, but even without the loftiness, it's been executed better. Ironically, it's been executed better by Clarence, which the creator of this show worked on. When it comes to the characters, I don't feel we got to see much of Seth's youngest sibling. We got at least one trait from the rest of the kids and at least some generic explanation on the mom, but episode 1 didn't really distribute the exposition very evenly. Sitting through a few more of the episodes to see if things improved, this wasn't resolved, and we're basically stuck with a very fleshed out characterization for Seth, a middling characterization for his older brother, and weak one-note descriptions for everyone else. Little seemed to change in the execution of each episode as well. Episode 2, Sick Day, was more of the same. The story was quite competent, as Seth, driven by his own competitiveness, gets everyone sick. Maybe not the best story for 2020. Truffalo offers a moral on science over fear, which is very appropriate for 2020, and I thought they actually executed in a world-fitting and interesting way from a concept and story standpoint. But I just don't feel it's engaging. I'm not compelled to sit through the rest of the season's 20 episodes in the blind hope that it gets better. The stories feel inventive, at least. I can't say I've seen these beats done the same way before, but at the same time, it feels like Cartoon Network wants us to congratulate them for the basic act of going through the motions. Admittedly, Cartoon Network has had a load of trouble with this in 2020, but CN has managed to creep past this bar before. Besides Infinity Train, the one objectively, undeniably good show Cartoon Network has had as of late, there was also Victor and Valentino, which hoisted itself up into moderate intrigue successfully, and Craig of the Creek, which threw me for a loop initially with a few good episodes, but I ultimately found too inconsistent in execution quality to stand. The Fungies is competent, which is unfortunately not a guarantee for Cartoon Network nowadays, especially this year, but competency is not the same as being good at what you're trying to do. There's a difference between knowing how to swim and being Michael Phelps. Such is what Cartoon Network is apparently asking from us. After half drowning previously with the likes of Thundercats, Roar, and Tick and Seek, they seemingly feel the Fungies is deserving of some level of praise in the same way it was given to Infinity Train for actually being a spectacle. Despite CN's attempts at warping perceptions in that direction, it's not, and I'm not going to give it to them. Other shows have done hijinks ensuing better elsewhere, and it continues to baffle me as to why Cartoon Network has such a Herculean problem with getting it right. Beyond the slightly pastel, storybook-like color palette, the artistic design is relatively forgettable. The natural feeling, shapes, and forms help to build the show some sort of visual identity, but as with other parts of the show, there's no real interest in going beyond the basics. This isn't an inherent flaw with the show. Our art styles have been ruined by poor execution, and unappealing or basic aesthetics have underpinned smash hit shows, but it comes off as blandly safe like the rest of the show seems to be. Despite the fact that we're exploring a new element of the wider world of Fungi Town, each episode, be it a bog, school, or a mountain, this show doesn't go about it in a way that makes things feel fulfilling. This is largely due to the weak character setups, but this show has a bit of a tendency to get in and get out, jumping through things relatively quickly, only establishing filler or B-plot to pad out the time. There's a song and montage in every episode to further accelerate things. It's not fast enough to present a real pacing challenge, but it also means that the extra elements they introduce come off as half-formed, and not enough to really build exposition or any interest in the side characters. The ends all tie together adequately, but there are almost no surprises to be had in the storytelling of this show, especially if you've been around long enough to know a few tropes. The Fungies is well-intentioned and technically competent, but when it comes time for the pieces to combine into more than the sum of their parts, the show sorely lacks. I will give no awards to the show for not tearing down a part of the storytelling or execution process, nor getting back to the baseline of mediocrity they hovered around last year and the year before. If CN is coming up from their lows earlier this year, then fine, but that means future products in 2021 and beyond have to actually get up to, and ideally pass, the level of things like Victor and Valentino. There's really little more I can say, either positive or negative, about the Fungies, or the Fungies, or however you pronounce it. I had choice words to say, however, about the other recent HBO Max transplant, Tick and Seek, which you can watch my review of up here or down in the description. Make sure you subscribe for more explorations from the world of television every single week. I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television, and I'll see you next time.